Good morning and welcome to the last Safety Safety Update webinar for 2025. I'm Gary Rowe, your host, and Andrea Rowe, our General Manager, and my colleague will join us when she can. Let's look at what I'd like to cover in our webinar this morning. Coming into obviously into Christmas, just our fairly usual update, but with some new things added to our usual pre-Christmas checklist for you, which was as part of our newsletter as well. A topic of the new Victorian Psychological Health Regulations. I'll just give you a quick update on those. You've probably heard about that. A case where a contractor fell through a skylight in some unusual circumstances. I thought it was rather interesting. I don't think you and I would experience this too often, but a driving accident after an 18-hour shift. I think 18 hours is a very long time, but in the both agriculture and some other industries where people are traveling long distances, first to get to somewhere where they're going to work and then to get home at the end of the day, they end up spending a very long day. So rather interesting. And we're bringing our first two-day safety leadership course, which is our foundation course, our most popular course. We're bringing it forward for early next year, and I'll explain that in early Feb. We're going to have that. So as usual, I like to ask just a couple of questions to get our mind thinking for the morning. So question one, can you wear open footwear, for example, sandals or thongs, while driving? So once again, coming into warmer weather, people either going to the beach or pool, or maybe just how they like to wear the footwear you like to wear during the hot weather, you're more likely to be wearing some open type footwear as opposed to shoes or runners or something of that nature. So the question is it legal to be driving your car with such footwear? I'll come back to this at the end of the session. I've got two questions today. The other question I've got, we had one of our good friends and clients ask us recently, they had some sticky control buttons on a particular machine. So they're a bit sticky. And the question was, do I need to install an emergency stop button in case that button sticks and stays on and creates some risk with the machine? So if you have sticky buttons on a machine, are you obliged to install an emergency stop button just in case? Even if the machine normally didn't have an emergency stop, are we required to have one under these circumstances? Just get your mind around those two questions. We'll come back to them at the end of this session. So turning our mind to staying safe at Christmas. And you and I know it's all about your family and friends and yourself over Christmas. And one of the things I think all of us can be guilty of, particularly at work, is that not to be rushed to wrap up every job and to tidy up. And by the way, I'm seeing some replies to some of the questions. Thanks, everyone. We'll come back to it. And I think some people have got part of the answer to one or two of those questions already. So number one, avoid being rushed. You may or may not be able to easily, quickly and safely complete every job that you would like to before Christmas. So particularly at work, or there may be some things around the house. Just take it a little bit easier on yourself. Maybe show the same patience that you show for others for yourself, and how tolerant you'd be for others who said to you, I just don't have time, I can't complete this. Obviously, whether it's at work or at home, you may well be shut for some time, going away for holidays, either from the office, work station, depots, etc. Clean up, housekeeping. We actually recommend have a look at what you don't need, what you've not been using. Anything in your immediate area, whether it be at home or at work, that you're not using, probably haven't used for at least a year, probably should not be there in your immediate area as our rule of thumb. And you might consider, do I actually dispose of this? Is it no longer needed, obsolete, or do I store it away somewhere else? So the only things that should be in your immediate reach, either at your desk, your immediate work area, and even at home, should be the things you're using daily. There's a rule of thumb. And of course, coming into Christmas, I think electrical and fire safety comes to mind for most of us. Those who like a real Christmas tree, a pine Christmas tree, our tip is keep it watered and obviously away from other flammable things like heaters or anything like that that might ignite it. Because even well-watered trees, the pine trees, Christmas trees, may well still be easily ignited. People are putting lights, Christmas lights on trees and around the house, and obviously electrical safety. And so one of the tips is, which I like that somebody reminded me recently, is when you're putting them outside, just check and make sure the Christmas lights are rated for outdoor use. I mean, people just open up a box and probably think Christmas lights are Christmas lights. So just one little thing to consider there as well. And not only, as I've mentioned at the outset, looking after yourself, maybe Christmas time's a time to look around you. It could be family or friends or others that are struggling. You'll see this in their face, you'll see it in their demeanour, you'll see it maybe in some of the comments they make. Just see if we can look after those people around us as well, whatever that kind thought, that kind action that you might consider in that area in this time of year. And another one, which I don't think we've had in previous pre-Christmas tips, is online safety. This is growing rapidly. I'm quite old, and my family remind me of this quite often, and so they believe I'm a real Luddite, and I'm increasingly buying online. Yes, Amazon and others, but probably primarily Amazon. It's just a reminder of online safety. So here's pre-Christmas. We're probably doing a lot more purchasing of gifts and things that we want and need for this time of year. And so think of those things, safe sites that you're going to use, reliable suppliers of equipment, and just watch out for dodgy emails that might direct you to an even dodgier website and not the one that you think you're going to. And maybe just finally on Christmas planning, think of emergencies. Don't wait until it happens. So the first thing is check your first aid kit at home and maybe in the car or camper, and just make sure it's well stocked as needed. And think about what you would do if somebody's injured or you come across something happens. That's your emergency plan, whether be it for home, if you're camping or traveling, just think about that as well. So there's our little brief takeaway tips coming into the Christmas season, and you can read more of that in our December safety newsletter if you like, and I assume everyone here this morning's already receives that. So what we try and do in this webinar is give you a bit more background to some of the things that we have limited time and space for our newsletter. So the new Victorian Psychological Health Regs. As you may be aware, particularly if you've got interstate operations, all other jurisdictions in Australia outside of Victoria have previously adopted the harmonised regulations and introduced the psychological health regulations. From memory was regulation 55A to G in the WHS regs, and that covers those. So that's fine. They've incorporated psychological health regulations into the WHS or harmonised laws. So what Victoria's done, and that's okay, this is good. So Victoria's finally released their regulations that commenced operation on the 1st of December, so they're in effect already. Nicely, they harmonise with the WHS legislation in this case. Different words, but essentially they are as short and as sharp and the same essential requirements, which is to identify psychosocial hazards and control the psychological harm that may come from that. So that's the essence of it. So both interstate and in Victoria, it's a very much more simplified, but we do have some requirements and things that we need to do. So for example, you can't say, oh, well, we will act as soon as we become aware that either a member of our staff or contractor or someone else is stressed or they report an incident. No, that'd be a breach of the regulations. You have to do proactive things One, to identify those psychosocial hazards and assess the risks and understand the psychological risks that you may have that around your business because of the nature of your business, that we require people to maybe work hard at this time of year. Maybe we've got performance requirements on people. We may be short of staff because somebody's away sick or on early holidays. All of these things can occur. So it's not enough now simply to say, if anything happens, we will act appropriately, we will act promptly and follow due process. That's not enough. So you have to do some proactive things before that incident or before you become aware of something. Otherwise, you're in breach. You haven't identified the psychosocial hazards associated with your business and operations. You haven't assessed them, you haven't consulted with your team, and you haven't put in appropriate controls. So let's just have a quick look. So as I said nicely, the Victorian regulations largely align with national WHS regulations, and all of them, both Victoria and interstate, follow what we call the standard risk management approach. That is, you identify hazards, you assess them, and you control them. So they're the three steps. So we've now got to do this for psychological hazards as well as for the physical hazards that we're all been historically used to. So, for example, we've got the physical hazards, tripping hazards, machinery hazards, chemical hazards, electrical hazards, falling, like fall at same level, slip, trip, falls, and we've got falls from heights. We've got objects that can fall from heights and strike us. So we've got mobile plant that could strike us. So they're all the physical hazards that we're all familiar with and we've been managing for decades. So this is what we know. What these regulations do is introduce essentially 5 more hazards, right? So they're now classified as workplace hazards. We have to identify them and control them. So we'll be familiar with the terms like bullying, sexual harassment, exposure to trauma, aggressive behaviour, possibly even things like poor work design, poor management of people. So these are the type of things that people will cite and turn to as issues that are causing stress and psychological harm in your workplace. So the good thing is there's some resources available, including a Victorian compliance code. And as you may know, if you follow a compliance code, that you are deemed to comply. So if you've actually acted on that. Unfortunately, the compliance code is quite thick, wordy. I couldn't find any succinct checklists that I could use to sign, to give me dot point that I've actioned all the key things that I needed to do. So personally, I didn't find the compliance code very easy to use or to understand or add any extra value than understanding what the regulations were, because I already know how to do that. I already know how to, our standard risk assessment model is to identify hazards, assess them and control them. And so have a look at the Victorian Code. We can't ignore it. It's a helpful guide. Unfortunately, in this case, it's done by somebody who doesn't understand helping you. They're just pouring out more and more information, and your mind will be probably going around, what does all this mean? How do I actually do all this? And at the end of the day, what is it a practical business has to do and the bare minimum things that must be in place? So maybe if I can share with you just quickly, what I would say is it's worthwhile having a look at your safety policy and incorporating that you're going to add the inclusion that health includes psychological health, and you may actually add some elements to what you might do in relation to this. If any of you are looking for a sample psychological health policy, give us a call or email us. We'll send it through to you. No problem at all. Secondly, you've got a legal requirement to identify psychosocial hazards in your business. So you can't just say we sat back and waited for a problem. No, you have to proactively have done something. So one, have it as an agenda item, not necessarily every single meeting, but you might choose to. But I would recommend maybe quarterly or minimum of twice a year. And certainly right now, have it shown in the agenda and in the minutes that you've actually raised the question with your team at every level in the business, that you've asked them, are there any concerns about psychological health for them, their colleagues, or anyone that they know throughout the business, and ask for details. What's causing this stress? What time of day or week or period throughout the year that this occurs? How does it occur? What's it associated with? To try and understand if people are telling you, yes, there is some stresses associated with our business, what are they and where are they? So one, have a policy. Two, you're going to survey whether your team expressing stress. Have it minuted, whatever their responses are that you've asked and responses. You may choose to do a survey, and the shorter survey will be just asking the 5 categories of hazards in the Victorian Psychological Health Regulations. So anything about the design of the work, the management of work, the carrying out of work, the systems of work, your procedures, and personal and business interactions. This is behaviours and discussions between people. So you've got a policy. You've actually tried to identify as far as reasonably practical. We've put it in meetings, we're inviting responses, and we've done a survey. So you can send out a short survey, 5 questions. Any concerns about X, Y, Z? And if so, please just tell us. People can be anonymous with these surveys, by the way. You'll deal with it however you like. We have a sample psychological health risk assessment template, if anyone's interested. It follows the normal risk management process. It just puts some language of psychological health into the template, risk assessment template. So if you're interested in any of those or sample survey, let us know and we'll send it through. So that's what we need to do in relation to the Victorian Psychological Health Regs, and interstate they already exist as well, but referred to as psychosocial health regulations in other states. Just so you understand, the general terminology is psychosocial hazards. So you talk about psychosocial hazards, but when you turn to the harm, it's psychological harm. So it's a psychological illness, not a psychosocial illness. So psychosocial hazards are up here, and if we don't manage them and identify them, manage them, they turn into psychological harm by whatever title that a psychologist or a medical practitioner may prescribe and diagnose as, and they'll have specific terms for whatever that psychological illness is. So there you go. There's the new Victorian Psychological Regulations. I'm not sure if Andrea is available. I don't think she is at the moment. If Andrea is there online, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about your membership of ISA, Andrea? Your speaker's not on, Andrea. At least I can't hear you. And Andrea's coming in to give us an update. So, Andrea, Safety Action First Australian member. Do you want to tell us a bit about this?
Yes. So, ISA is part of the International Labour Organization.
Yeah.
And we are actually the first Australian member of the section of machinery safety.
Right.
So this is a really important working group that have several projects, a lot of research-based projects relating to machinery safety. So they have a page on capturing research on defeating machinery safety safeguards. I've presented at several of the conferences organised by this section. The most recent was in Rome earlier this year. So we were invited to become members. So Safety Action is now part of this group and will help to contribute to the field of machinery safety. And they're very interested in evolving hazards, especially around digitisation, the use of AI and, auto guided machinery.
Yeah, I do remember, Andrea, when you came back from the conference in Rome, one of the things that stuck in my mind is you told me their studies showed that when there was unguarded or inadequately guarded machinery, at least half the time, 50% of the time, the supervisor knew and condoned it.
Yeah, isn't
that scary? Our own supervisors know and are condoning inadequate guarding on machinery. And of course, when the accident happens, now the business is in trouble because it was unguarded and it was known before the accident.
Correct. Yeah. So we actually have a lot of good safeguards actually built into the machine. If you buy the new machine, it's got a lot of safeguards, but unfortunately, the business, the senior management think that they bought good quality new machinery with a lot of safety features. But unfortunately, if they can be defeated, the workers are in danger and the company, of course, is at risk.
Fantastic. Thanks, Andrea. I'll let you get back to your desk and just look into your speaker. So thanks for that, Andrea. Just a brief article because I'm mindful of time and I want to get back to our questions of the week, if you like. So I'm hearing bare feet could be better than some old footwear or something, I think I saw. Thank you very much for that tip. We'll come back to those questions in a moment. Contractor falls through skylight. Bear with me. I've seen a number of these this year. This is people falling through skylights. And so one of the things you'll see in the image here, when people have a skylight, there's essentially, if you like, I'm a safety engineer, two types of skylights: trafficable skylights and non-trafficable skylights. If anyone has fitted and they've got relatively shallow roofs, it doesn't have to be totally flat, but relatively shallow so people can walk on them. So generally less than 26 degrees slope. They need to be trafficable skylights unless you're putting safety mesh in underneath so that no one can fall through. Or you're going to have to control access to your roof in some way. So what we're seeing is unfortunately people going on roofs for a variety of reasons, and you'll never know all of the reasons why. And in this case here, a skylight had a 3mm thick plastic sheeting over it. This is just intended as a skylight over like a balcony or over some light structure, never intended as a trafficable roof, but people invariably go up for whatever reason. So if you've got those in your business or at home, make sure people don't go on the roof without controls if you've got non-trafficable skylights. So have a look for that and make sure you've got it. And in this case, the company was charged, you can see there, $270,000. They had no roof access permit, so at a business level, no permit to go on the roof. And the SWIMS didn't mention the risk of the skylights for the workers. The whole idea of a SWIMS is it's meant to highlight the key risks, the high work risk hazards for the workers, and it failed to do so. So you might think, without knowing other details, that maybe the company deserved the fine and the prosecution in that case. I mentioned earlier about an 18-hour shift, and I said this often happens in agriculture and other industries. In this case, it was horse racing. And you can see a little image there with a horse float and a vehicle off the side of the road. So a young driver fell asleep on the way home after 18 hours of work driving to and from the racetrack and crashed. 4 passengers were injured, and I understand, unfortunately, the horses in the horse float all died. The horse float was overloaded, so it wasn't legal. The horse float was unregistered. It was not legal to go on the road. The relief driver for this long shift was not licensed to tow large floats, so shouldn't have been doing this. The passengers were not wearing seat belts, and the driver has a responsibility to ensure that they actually wear the seat belts. Subsequently, because of those failures, which primarily live in the first instance with the driver, who should make sure the passengers have seat belts, that they are rated and licensed for what they're about to drive, and that they would not drive with an unregistered trailer. So they've got to ensure legal compliance. So in this case, the driver was sentenced to 8 weeks jail, but fully suspended. So the court's trying to make a point. This is a serious breach. 10 weeks jail seems appropriate, but suspended in this case, but you're on notice, and probably everyone else is on notice. In a separate case, WorkSafe will now turn their attention to the company that employed these people and how this came about. So this is obviously about fatigue management. The registration of the trailer, and it's a separate issue. The company didn't even have current workers' compensation insurance and registration. So there's a number of failures there, probably attributable to this individual business than the industry. But the industry tells you they travel long distances to get to horse racing events and then to get home often in the same day. So just an interesting case I thought I'd share with you. I mentioned earlier, we're bringing forward our most popular foundation course for safety leadership. So if you want to kick off the year really well, or you've got some key supervisors or managers and you want them to hit the deck running in 2026 with really good, strong, clear safety leadership, we recommend either this course or similar. And so we've got our first 2-day course coming up on the 11th and 12th of February. We already have a number of bookings. We have limited places. So if you are interested, book them in now or talk to your boss about that. If you haven't attended it, even if you're highly experienced, I recommend you attend. You may well find out some things that you did not know. You might also find it rather interesting and a fun experience, as well as good networking. So something I recommend. So coming back to the question, I've seen some answers out there, and I can confirm what I've seen is in the chat spots. You're all correct. There is no law prohibiting you or I wearing sandals, thongs, other footwear. And let me say, people could be wearing high heels. They could be wearing big, heavy, chunky boots that could risk being jammed on the pedals, etc. You can be in bare feet. And somebody said, well, bare feet might be better than loose footwear. And I personally, I think you're right, but I prefer to wear good, solid runners. In fact, I'm wearing driving shoes at the moment for one of my sports cars I drove to work, but that's a separate matter. So one, there is no law prohibiting any of these other types of footwear, including bare feet. But here's the point. If that footwear is inappropriate for driving and gets jammed and causes an accident, then that will be the breach. So it's not that you shouldn't be wearing it, it's whether it interferes with safe driving. So no matter what you're wearing or not wearing, if it interferes with safe operation of the vehicle, and that becomes apparent, particularly after an accident, that's when the police are more likely to find it, that will be the breach. So inappropriate footwear that cause you to lose control of the vehicle. So the footwear in itself, as long as you can safely wear it and control the vehicle, then that's fine. So my second question, somebody said, I've got sticky buttons. I just want to make sure the machine stops when I push the stop button. So I better put an emergency stop on the machine because it didn't have one initially. And bear with me, we've experienced this and similar. Andrew and I, with a lot of machine guarding. And the one thing I can share with you, as a qualified safety engineer with close to 35 years experience now, investigating lots of accidents and occasionally acting as expert witness, what I can tell you is that almost invariably emergency stop buttons are useless for safety. They happen after somebody is already caught or injured. So in fact, you're already in breach, and unfortunately, your worker or workers will already be injured. So it's highly unlikely that in the speed of most machinery, unless it's extremely slow and you've got time to use an emergency stop button, we have no experience of people using them. People get caught in machinery and they start to pull their hand out and they're shouting out, they do not push the emergency stop button. So an emergency stop button will not make an unsafe machine legal. If it has got sticky controls, then those sticky controls is the breach of the safety regulations. You must have effective controls that function correctly. So what it needs is servicing and maintenance of the controls, not adding something that people think is an additional safety device. So there's just a little tip. Just be wary of people saying, let's add an emergency stop button to our machine. So once again, I'm often trying to cover so much material with all of you, and thank you for your interest in attending. Thank you for those who also offered answers and suggestions. We appreciate it. I don't always have time during the session to either read or respond to all of them, but I did see them as they came through. So thank you for that. So thank you everyone for your interest and support. We hope you have a safe and a Merry Christmas, and we look forward to seeing you early in the new year. And once again, thanks for everyone for your joining us here and for your support throughout the year. We greatly appreciate it. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a great Christmas period. Bye.